David, I got 8 ways to go here, but I've got to go to the idea that the former president of the United States thinks the Electoral College of Madison, Jefferson, and the rest is out of date. Is he serious?
Well, he favors direct election. Obviously, direct election has some problems. But as he points out, the Electoral College was set up when we had 13 states or colonies, and it was set up in a way that was designed to help the South have more influence in the election of the president because of the slavery issue. But in the end, direct election has been talked about many times over the last 200-plus years, and I think it's unlikely we're going to change because it will require a constitutional amendment, which requires 2/3 of each House and 3/4 of each of the states, and the smaller states are not going to agree to a direct election system, which eliminates their influence in the Electoral College. But I think the most important thing I would take away from the interview is that Bill and Hillary are still very deeply involved in what's going on in the United States. I think no couple since Eleanor and Franklin Roosevelt have together had as much influence for as long a time as the Clintons have had. Bill Clinton was president of the United States for 8 years, Hillary Clinton a senator for more than one term, and then Secretary of State for 4 years. And so the combined experience the two of them have is quite unusual. Eleanor Roosevelt never held elective office. And interestingly, I think they still have a lot of influence in the Democratic Party. When they talk, people do listen, and I think they're widely regarded as having pretty good political insights and pretty good policy chops. I don't think that today, they are likely to be able to influence President Biden that much, though they know him. But President Biden is on a certain trajectory. But there's no doubt that they have influence throughout the Democratic Party and probably with some influence with President Biden.
There's a really intense debate right now, David, among a lot of people talking about the age of the candidates who are running for office and whether it represents the rank and file of the country, why it is that sort of mainstays in politics have continued to be the headliners again and again, year after year, even as some people would argue they may be aging out. What was the view of the Clintons on that?
Well, they're not going to say anything specifically about the age issue in a way that would be upsetting to President Biden. But there's no doubt that both of them are in their mid to late 70s now, and they recognize when you're in your mid to late 70s, I'm 74, you probably have more challenges doing certain things than you can do before. Last night in a different forum, I interviewed Jim Baker, former Secretary of State, who's now 93 and a half years old. And, you can see he's very smart still. But, when you're interviewing somebody in her 90s, it's different than interviewing somebody in their 60s. I think the President of the United States today is, 80, and his likely candidate against him, Donald Trump, is 77. So it's a different situation than people expected. When I was younger, John Kennedy ran, he was 43 years old. That was thought to be too young. What's too old, what's too young, nobody really knows. The voters have to make their decision. There's no doubt that as all of us age, we recognize that it's more difficult to do certain things in your 70s that you could probably do in your 60s.
No.
Well, it's a good point, and everyone's age is different for each person in terms of what they can do. It's just the reason why I bring it up is because it has played so heavily in polls at a time where people are trying to understand what the new path, the new vision is. Yesterday, we saw President Biden on the picket line talking about workers' rights, and a lot of this had to do with the globalization and some of what that did to the industrial complex. Do the Clintons weigh in on kind of how they see globalization at a time where it's really being called into question?
Well, I don't think they think globalization is going away. They think it's been challenged a bit, that China is more complicated a country to deal with than it was before. But I think globalization, they would say, and I would agree, is here to stay. It's just going to go through some ups and downs. Clearly, the Congress of the United States is more divided on globalization than it was when President Clinton was in office. When President Clinton was in office, we brought the Chinese into the WTO, and now there's some people that think that was a mistake. I think it was a good thing to do, but there are many people who think that we've given China too many opportunities to be competitive with us. And, I think the Clintons are not against China's being in the WTO for sure, but there's no doubt it's a different environment than it was 25, 30 years ago.
What will the impact of the Clintons be at a convention in 2024, or the development of I guess, Mr. Biden running
Right.
again. What do you perceive as being their impact on the party?
Their impact is that they're highly, highly respected. I was at an event in Aspen this weekend where many people who are prominent former leaders of the Democratic Party were there. There were also Republicans there. And Hillary Clinton was a speaker, and she got a terrific reaction from many people there. Barack Obama was there. He also was well received. So I suspect at the next Democratic convention, Bill and Hillary, assuming they speak, will get standing ovations because they're very good speakers and widely regarded and highly regarded in the Democratic Party. Barack Obama and Michelle Obama the same. That's different to say that they can change people's votes that much. They have some influence, but as we all know, Bill Clinton is a very good speaker and very good at explaining things, and I suspect he'll get an incredible ovation when he speaks at the Democratic convention, as I assume he will.